Hey y'all, Father Jim Haney from St. Paul's in the Plains in Lubbock and Texas Tech Canterbury. I'm heading home from a couple of events in Abilene, but I'm getting off the interstate and taking the back way up Highway 83, and I'm in the town of Anson, Texas. When you drive up on Anson, this courthouse is what dominates the skyline. As you're coming up over the slight rise in the plains, this is on the next rise. It's the center of town, it's the highest point in town, and it really dominates. In fact, it dominates so much that Highway 83 has to split and go around it. You see these cars coming up and they have to divert around the courthouse. It really is smack dab right in the middle of town. Turn of the last century, late 19th century, early 20th century, courthouses were often the biggest things in small Texas towns. That was a symbol, I guess, of civic pride and of the law and of government being the most important thing around. And so the buildings reflect that. They are the biggest buildings in some of these older Texas towns. Some other Texas towns, when you drive up on them, you see something else. You might see a grain elevator as the largest structure in town, a commercial building. If you go to a bigger town like Lubbock or Amarillo, there are small skyscrapers. You go to Dallas or Houston, bigger skyscrapers still. All buildings geared and oriented towards commerce. And if you figure malls and Walmarts and other big box stores, they're not tall, but they do have a lot of square footage in our more modern cities. And so in our time, it is the commercial buildings that are the most prominent and the most important. But there was a time when there was something else that was the most prominent thing in the town. Before courthouses were prominent, before our time today when commercial buildings were the most important, there were times when the church building was the most dominant building in a European town, even in some American cities. If you drive into Rhineland, Texas, or if you drive into a town like Windthorst, Texas, near Wichita Falls, there are large Catholic churches that are the dominant buildings on the skyline. And that also says something about their culture, that the church, that Christianity, that the faith was the most important thing in their world. Now, there's nothing wrong with government. Government is important, and we as good citizens need to participate in our governmental functions. And there's nothing wrong with commerce. We live in a complex market economy. We do work to support ourselves and to provide things for other people, and in turn they provide goods and services for us. So there's nothing wrong with governmental buildings being the biggest. There's nothing wrong with commercial buildings being the biggest, but we are missing something. If we make government or the law the central part of our lives, then we're missing out on something. And if we make commerce the central part of our lives, if money is the most important thing to us, then we again are missing out on something important. For Christians, it is vitally important in these days when secular buildings are no longer, when secular buildings are the dominant things on the skyline. It is important to remember that for us, our faith needs to be the most important thing. And we need to keep that the center of our lives, even if it's not anymore the center of our cities and towns. But there is one other reminder. When you're driving into Anson, yes, this building dominates the skyline. But there's something else that's actually a little bit higher. There is a water tower just over on this side of town. And I think for Christians, that's a good reminder. Water brings life. And we know that the water of baptism brings us even greater life, even deeper life still. And so if you're driving up on a big town and see the skyscrapers, give thanks for the commerce. And if you're driving up on an older, smaller town and see the courthouse, give thanks for our government, our democracy. Those are wonderful gifts. And yet, take a look at the water tower. Remember that you are baptized. It is your identity as a child of God, baptized into the body of Christ. It is the most central thing, the most important thing in your life. And so as the cars are whizzing around the courthouse, I will bid you farewell from Anson, Texas. God bless. Have a wonderful day.